Hey, we have some exciting news to share. We have written a book, Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and it is now available for pre-order on Amazon. Just search for the title of our book, Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and pre-order your copy today. As listeners of our podcast, you know we have been using the principles of a polarity mindset, healthy relationships, and meaningful dialogue as leaders for decades. And as business partners, these principles are the cornerstone of our business. Polarities are all around us, even in us, and if you can't recognize them and don't know how to leverage them, they will haunt you. They will keep showing up as persistent problems you are unable to solve. For us, having this knowledge compels us to share it with leaders around the world. We believe the polarization in our homes, schools, communities, and world would shift if every leader became polarity intelligent. We can't wait for you to read our book. Pre-order your copy of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership on Amazon.com now. This is the True Leader Podcast, formerly known as Healthcare's Missing Logic Podcast. Today, we invited our book coach and editor, Adele Booysen, to join us and share her experience of working with us as co-authors of the book, Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership.
This is a not-to-miss, fun and enlightening behind-the-scenes look. So stay tuned. Welcome to the True Leader Podcast. I'm Dr. Tracy Christofferson.
And I'm Michelle Trosett.
We are life and business besties, leadership coaches and mentors, and polarity intelligence experts. We're the authors of Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership, and co-founders of Missing Logic.
We are here to help high-achieving leaders break through leadership norms that cause them suffering at work and home. If you're looking to elevate your leadership, increasing your productivity, effectiveness, and impact, and manage your health and well-being, spend quality time with those you love, and live your best life, then you are in the right place.
Our goal in this podcast is to equip you with new ways of thinking and practical and tactical strategies for succeeding at work and thriving in life. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of personal and professional development so you can reach your full leadership potential, create a life you love, and be what we are calling a thriving, resilient, and unstoppable or true leader.
If you are ready to learn and laugh a little, let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of the True Leader Podcast. I'm Tracy.
And I'm Michelle.
And here we are. On the airwaves, chatting it up again today.
And what a special guest we had today.
Oh, she was very special. Very near and dear to our little hearts.
We will be connected to her for the rest of our life.
We will, because she actually helped us write our book.
Yes, she did.
Yeah, which is in pre-order and going to be available next week.
Next week.
On the bookshelves next week.
Yeah, so we thought this was a good time to have her on so you could get to know her.
Yeah.
Before you read our book.
We really got to know her, and she got to know us too. Well, it was really fun to talk to her in this way, in a different way than what we had been talking to her.
Yes.
You know, as she helped coach and edit our book. And so it was really fun to have Adele on.
Yeah, so it's a fun interview. You won't want to miss it. So
A little behind the scenes.
keep listening. And what it was like to work with Tracy and Michelle and what she's learned about polarity intelligence herself. And you could tell it was just such an honor for her to be a guest on our podcast. So I'm excited for everyone to meet her.
Yeah, me too. Why don't you tell everybody who she is?
I will. So our coach and editor for our book is Adele Booysen, and she's originally from South Africa. And Dr. Adele Booysen has spent the last 30 years in 8 different countries, working in various settings, including as an editor at Overseas Radio and Television in Taiwan, a writer and photographer at Empowering Lives International in Kenya, and overseeing leadership development in Asia with Compassion International. When Adele moved to Guatemala in 2018, she founded Blue Thread Coaching and Editing to help authors write a story worth reading. Adele also offers life planning retreats called My Life Blueprint, where she helps clients write a story worth living. Plus, she serves as a dissertation supervisor for Bakke Graduate University, the university where she earned her doctorate in ministry. She has co-written and ghostwritten several books, of which Finding Grace was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize for fiction. So without further ado, here's our interview with Adele.
Well, Adele, welcome to the True Leader Podcast. We're so happy you're here with us today.
Thank you very much. It's so good to be here with you.
Wow.
Yes, we've been looking forward to having this conversation and just being with you again. It's been a while.
Yeah. Well, to be with you in this way.
Yes, in this way.
It's a little bit different than how we've been with you in the past.
Zoom. Indeed, it was very Zoom all the time and different focus.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure. Sure. Well, just so, as we get started, of course, we've introduced our listeners to you and a little bit, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story as a coach, a book coach and editor, kind of like how'd you get started? Tell us the jam on your story. Give us the down and dirty.
All right. So you would have said, my name's Adele Booysen. I always say Adele like the singer, Booysen like the berry, so people can remember. So I have been an editor for more than 30 years. I started in, almost 30 years. I started in 1995 in Taiwan. I worked as a magazine editor there for several years. And since then, I transitioned to other positions in other countries. I'm originally from South Africa, I should say. So if I sound a little bit funny, it's because I'm from South Africa. And anyway, so I moved to other countries in other roles, many of them still involving writing, editing, photography, creation, creativity. And during the pandemic, I actually switched from doing part-time editing to full-time book coaching and editing. And so one of the things that I love about what I do is the variety of clients that I get to work with. Like Tracy, Michelle, you were, here in the US, some of my clients currently are, there are 2 authors that are in Finland. There are another 2 that are in Thailand. Another client of mine is in Denver. And so they're typically all over the show and with a lot of different topics. So for me as a book coach and an editor, I love the variety. I love connecting with people from such diverse backgrounds and who are passionate about different topics. For me, it's always, I'm very curious to learn new things. And so with every book, I learn something new. And that's such a treat for me. That's my business. I get to take a really deep dive into a new topic every time, every new book and every new author that I get to work with. I mostly work with new authors. I have worked with some authors that have published previous books, and but for the most part, it's new authors, and I work mostly with nonfiction. I have worked on one fiction book that ended up being a Pulitzer being nominated for a Pulitzer, but that's not my passion. I ghostwrote that one, but my passion is nonfiction editing. Because of the transformation that it can bring in people's lives. People learn new things. And especially with the topic, say, like Polarity Intelligence, they gain new skills, they gain new knowledge. And it's not just about, okay, what can I learn? It's how can I put this to use in life? And so I love that. I love the variety of people and topics. And I love being able to help authors take a topic that they're passionate about, that they know a lot about, and help them take it to the next level in terms of how they communicate about it to their readers.
Well, you did an excellent job with us. I know. I feel like we were really blessed to have you as our
yes.
book coach, because it is, it's a daunting task to take something that you know and you forget how much you know, and then to put it into layman's terms, so to speak, right? To put it out there in a way that it's digestible by other people, that it's understandable, and it makes sense. Is that too academic? So, yeah, I appreciate that. And wow, I hadn't thought about what a gift that is really for you to learn so much through the process.
Yeah, the global coach, the global book coach.
Yeah.
That's really awesome.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, we really, really enjoyed working with you on our book, Polarity Intelligence, The Missing Logic in Leadership. It was definitely a journey, and we needed a guide. So thank you.
Yes, we did. Yeah, just to your point of helping new authors, Adele. So Tracy and I, as you're aware, and many of our listeners are, we worked together as leaders for over 30 years. And through the 30 years, we cultivated a lot of knowledge and some of the concepts that made the biggest, most transformational difference to us were the components that now comprise Polarity Intelligence. And so we knew about polarities, we knew about dialogue, we knew the value of relationships. And so to be the ones to kind of put it all together in a book and define Polarity Intelligence was just, we're still just like, it's done. It's out there.
It's right there.
It's right there. And you really helped us with it. I mean, we had the idea, we had the outline, but to put it in a way that readers could really benefit from it was very helpful. So, so the Polarity Intelligence components, Tracy and I will kind of walk through them for our listeners, just to give some context to our conversation as well, is you do have to have a polarity mindset. You have to be able to recognize that everything's not a problem. All challenges are not an either or decision, to really work with them and apply the principles of polarities, always.
Well, and I think too, managing or leveraging a polarity at the personal level is one thing, and there are personal, organizational, leadership, international. I mean, they're global, right? But when you're leveraging a polarity at the personal level is one thing. But when you really have to sit in and explore a polarity with somebody else, and polarities, right, are interdependent pairs of what appear to be opposing or contradictory perspectives that are really interdependent and need each other. When you're sitting in communication or conversation with somebody who's holding that opposing perspective, you really need to have a foundation of a healthy relationship, because it can get quite tense, right? There's tension and energy between these two perspectives. And to manage that, really, it requires the development of a fundamental relationship, right? That's really connecting people at the soul level. It's intentional, and it's really around a shared purpose. And so that's why that's such an essential element of Polarity Intelligence, is because you can't really explore polarities with others without that fundamental component.
Yeah. And then, of course, we really knew that you also have to have the skills of meaningful dialogue, because when it comes to having opposing views, you sort of have to talk about them. And so how do we do that to invite understanding and to really feel comfortable of inquiring and creating that safe place, that psychological safety that you need when there are those tensions and opposing views, so that you can, again, gain that understanding. So we lay out in the book, too, the principles of meaningful dialogue and really the principles of all three, and created that definition and the way to apply Polarity Intelligence for leaders everywhere.
Yeah. And then you helped us bring it to life in this book. So there we go.
Okay.
Now, had you ever heard about polarities before you started to work with us? Was that one of the things you learned about?
I do believe I've heard about polarities, but typically it was in the context of it was in a negative context, right? it was always like, if I think of years ago, I lived in a village in Kenya, and it was kind of like, okay, either you completely embrace everything about this culture, or you're all about changing everything. And even there, I thought about, these are polarities, but never, it wasn't a deep, process of exploring. And how can you actually marry these two ideas, and not marry them, but and leverage them to find the best in both. And so I'd heard about it, but it was always in a negative context. It's like, no, it's got to be either or. And so I certainly learned a ton from you with Polarity Intelligence, not only polarity thinking, but then leveraging all three components of Polarity Intelligence.
Awesome.
That's awesome. Well, you were referred to us when we reached out to our publisher, and you were referred to us as someone that would be great to work with, and we're so grateful. We're so grateful because it was really wonderful walking that journey with you, Adele. And we were wondering, we would really like you to tell our listeners, what was it like working with us?
It was wonderful. I think it is. Were you the first? I think you were the first authors that came as two authors to
a package.
A
package.
A package. I have since had multiple co-authors in books, but you were the first ones where there were two authors. And I knew from the start it may be challenging finding a cohesive voice in there, because the two of you have such different personalities, right? And one, I won't mention names, but one writes very academic.
Guess who? Dr. Tracy.
So just finding a way in which to there's the whole using polarity intelligence in the process, right? With
exactly.
Candor and diplomacy, and working together and saying, okay, how can we make this less academic? Because nobody wants to pick up a textbook. And there are people who are drawn to textbooks, and as an academic myself, there's a time and a place for a textbook. But a general book that you want to be used by the public, read by the public, and have an impact on leaders' lives. You don't want it to bore them. And so working with the two of you it's such a pleasure. It's such a pleasure working with somebody who knows the subject matter so well. And you've worked in this field for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
And so you know your stuff. It's not like I had to kind of help you figure out what you want to say. You already had, when we worked with a framework of, the chapters, the table of contents, and how one idea will lead to the next, where readers will be in terms of their learning process. You had that figured out. That was easy for you. It was more the bigger challenges were just, how do you manage a business and clients and a full schedule with prioritizing a book? And so those are the challenges which you managed well. But there are times when we had to take a short pause. When you had to finish your dissertation. Not had to, you got to finish your dissertation. And, that's a big deal. But so it was such a pleasure. It's a pleasure working with people who are friends. Obviously, none of the co-authors pairs that I've worked with, nobody writes a book because they don't like each other, right? It's like friends or colleagues or spouses that go in together and say, okay, let's write a book. But you can, it's such a blast working with two friends who've known each other. And, for you, I don't know, if you ever felt like you were stepping on each other's toes in the process, but it was very different trying to guide and help like, I know, Michelle, there was a time when you felt a little bit stuck and you're like, I can get up on a stage and talk about these things, but it's harder for me to get it out on paper. And so finding like what would work best for you with your personality, and such a joy to work. It was absolutely just a pleasure working with you.
Well, we appreciate that. And I think you just really recognize that we do have different styles. And we certainly learned we had different styles writing the book.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have been 7 years writing technical, writing a dissertation, right? Like, so I had to be beaten into me, how to write. Like, so, and I was still writing my dissertation while we were writing this book. So talk about a polarity. Like, I had to walk both sides of that road, right? The conversational style. Then I'd have to flip back to the dissertation style. Poor Adele. She's just like, come on, girl, come on. But very different approaches and styles.
But what I appreciate about you is you really helped us find out what works for us. So like dictation worked wonderful for me once I discovered it. and we wanted the right balance, right? We wanted the balance of the science to back up what we're bringing, because it's certainly, there's a lot of evidence. And we also wanted to fill the book with stories and practical tips and strategies that leaders can take and start to apply right away. And so that was a big piece of it as well. And the candor, diplomacy, structure, flexibility. There were a lot of polarities that we managed throughout the process of writing the book, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and definitely individual and team.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
For all three of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, since you gained a little bit of knowledge about polarity intelligence through the process, kind of share a little bit about like what has that opened up for you? Like, what might be some experiences that you've had since we did our work together? And it's been a little while, so but just kind of what has that opened up for you as far as how you see things, or what your experiences have been that maybe have been influenced by what you learned in the process?
You know that line from The Sixth Sense, the movie where the kid says, "I see dead people," and it felt to me after this book like, I see polarities everywhere. It's like which before, and you told me that in one of probably our first meeting, the introductory meeting, and you said, once you get this, you will see polarities everywhere. And I work with a very small team. I don't manage a large team at this stage in my business, but I have deep conversations with many friends who manage teams. And as I converse with them time and again, I've said, okay, I can explain this idea to you, but just wait until this book is out. You have to read it. And this is a book that you'll want to give to your team, because you will see the polarities in the workplace. You will see how it's not an either or. It is, it's about bringing out the best in both opposing ideas. And so even last week, I was meeting with a couple whom I have known for a long time, and they asked me if I would work with them on their book, which is partly memoir, partly theology. And throughout the process, we've also had to look at the way the husband tells the story versus the wife, and honoring both voices. But they took some time after the entire manuscript was completed and read through it again. And the wife came back and said, there's too much theology. And the husband said, there are too many stories. and the husband told me when the call started, he said, Adele, I think you will have to add marriage therapy to your skill set here, because we're butting heads on this. I want her to cut stories. She wants me to cut theology. And as we were conversing and having that meaningful dialogue based, and it's all rooted in healthy relationships, we were able to get to a point where they said, and we didn't do a whole polarity map and stuff, but it's just the idea of what would be the best thing about being able to leverage both of these? What's the greater good that you're aiming for? What would happen if neither of these work? And to be able to go back and forth, and for them to say, okay, yeah, we can do this. We can find a way that it doesn't get boring, it doesn't get preachy, it doesn't get dogmatic. Those all the negative outcomes of being too much theology, right? In a book that presents itself as memoir, or having so many stories that people are like, I can't relate. It's all about you, right? So finding that balance. And so even, as recently as just this Friday, being able to use what I learned from you and see, okay, this is a polarity and this is how you can leverage it.
Yeah.
So I'm, all the time I see some of those others. Like I said, I see polarities now. I'm still in the process of learning how to best leverage those. But I think it's an ongoing process.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Definitely. And it sounds like theory and application is what it sounds like you were dealing with.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. And you're right. That's the first step. And I think, that's what we hope, even just as the first step for people that get the book and they just start to observe them and see them, because that's the first step of becoming and really getting a polarity mindset, right? And then to your point, just engaging in conversation with others about, let's just talk about this. Is there a both and here, right? That we can really get to. So I appreciate that. I think that's great. Wow. Awesome.
Great example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we want to know, Adele, what are you most excited about this book getting out into the world? What excites you the most?
I think being able to see the impact that it has on readers' lives. For my friends who are in business and who manage teams, I definitely will be ordering the book for them, and to see them put it to practice and apply it in their teams. And I was even thinking with some very short, soon I will be heading home to South Africa to spend a couple of months with family, and with my parents and my extended family in South Africa, and even some challenges there. It's not that I'm thinking I can be more curious and have more dialogue around some of the issues that you might just think, yeah, no, I know what I think about this, and so for me, being able to apply that, but that doesn't answer your question. What am I most excited about having, this book being out, is seeing it being applied in friends' lives and also in my life as I continue to learn more about polarity intelligence.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something that I hadn't really, I kind of probably thought about it, but we've been thinking about the three together so much, right? In the polarity intelligence kind of triad. But people are going to learn not just how to leverage healthy relationships and meaningful dialogue with a polarity. It's really about how to be in a healthy relationship and the principles that can guide that, and the principles that can guide meaningful dialogue. Whether you're talking about a polarity or you're not talking about a polarity, people are going to be able to learn those principles and be able to apply that and strengthen those relationships or strengthen those abilities to engage in meaningful conversations. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. And I think it is a call to say, how can I sit with some of these tensions differently than maybe I have sat with them before? Because you're right. People go, I know what I think about that, and I'm not open to thinking anything else at the moment. That might not be what you're saying, but I'm just saying some people have been like, or they're just like, if I engage in this could get really tense, right? There's emotions involved. People they highly value their perspectives, right? And they, in some cases, these are about values. And people are very attached to their values or their beliefs. And so engaging in conversation can be tense, right? And it doesn't always end well. But when you have some different skills, you don't have to shy away from it. You can actually lean into it a little bit more and, not be afraid. but go into it with the, the openness, even if the other person doesn't know. It doesn't matter. It's about you growing and evolving your perspective and trying to meet somebody on a different level or in a different way with their perspective, right? It doesn't have to be about sharing yours. So I just really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. And I think also, Tracy, it could be that, once you know this, you have this tool, it could be tempting to want to, whip out a notebook or a napkin and start explaining the polarities. And people aren't always open to that. So as long as it can become part of my way of thinking, others' way of thinking, and we can then engage differently. That's what I hear you say. It's like we can start with ourselves and engage differently with others, be more curious, listen better. And while in the back of our mind looking for, okay, what's the positive outcomes? What are negatives? What are some of the red flags here? What if we don't leverage this polarity and do our best that we can to engage in a way that would nurture even better relationships.
Right. You can use your dialogue and relationship skills to uncover so much when you understand.
Yeah, and I just think it's important too to note that not every tension we experience is a polarity. Not every tension is a polarity. So it is important to understand what the elements of a polarity are, to know when you're engaged in a conversation with somebody who has an opposing perspective, whether that's really a polarity, right? And if it's a polarity, then you want to really gain knowledge and understanding from that perspective, because both are necessary. Both are equally important, and you can't avoid that. You can't deny it. So your best way forward is to do that, but not everything is a polarity. Not every tension you experience. So I just wanted to say that because I think it's an important point. You have to be able to discern: is this really a polarity, or is this something else? Right? That's not going to help us.
That's right. And sometimes just the point you make in your book too is sometimes you just deal with problems. There are times when you have a problem that needs to be solved.
Yes.
And
you just
that simple.
Yeah, you just have to know the difference, right? Yeah, you just have to know the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Adele. This has been a great conversation, and just reconnecting with you and exploring what it was like. It was going down memory lane for all three of us. And I know our listeners got a lot out of it as well. So thank you so much. And we're going to wrap up now. I'm going to ask you some personal questions so we can get to know the true you, the true Adele.
Watch out.
And then Tracy's going to close the interview. Okay. So you ready? You ready for the true you questions?
Let's see.
Okay. We want to know, and so do our listeners, what is your most favorite thing about living in Guatemala?
The views.
Oh, the views,
I
yes.
live in Antigua, Guatemala. Well, it's not just the views. The weather there produces amazing views. I live very close to an active volcano. And so every day when I drive into town to where my office is, I drive through coffee plantations and I see an active volcano erupting. And so it's quite spectacular. I like it.
Does that scare you?
No. I mean, there have been times. My very first weekend in Guatemala, there was a massive eruption, and actually people died, and it was not good. So when it gets really bad, it's more. I'm more scared for people who live at the foot of the volcano. I'm a safe distance from the volcano. It's close enough, but it's beautiful.
That's wonderful. It's like Mount Rainier in Washington. It's the same thing. I have relatives that live there, and it's so beautiful, but awesome. And then the second question is, what is your favorite hobby, your favorite Adele hobby? What do you like to do that's something just for you, not work related, that you love to do?
I I used to love reading, and it's it's a little bit more challenging when you're an editor to just read for pleasure. When I read for pleasure, I read fiction because then I don't edit. When I read nonfiction, I have learned it's better now for me to listen to nonfiction. I still edit, unfortunately, but it's not necessarily a good thing. What do I love doing? In answer to your question, I just hang out with really good people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm blessed with having a really great circle of friends. Some of my friendships go back many years, and that's such a gift for me when I get to spend time with my friends, whether in person or just on WhatsApp. I'm single. I'm happily single, and I can say I'm happily single because I have multiple amazing friends who pour into my life and whose lives I get to pour into and speak into. So on an average day, that's one of the things I love doing.
Wonderful.
Well, that's right up Michelle's alley.
Nothing like a good circle of friends.
She loves hanging out with friends.
I do.
She does. That's good. Well, I like it too, but yeah, I mean, she really likes it. Really, really likes it. Oh, Adele, it's just been such a pleasure to be with you today, and especially in this way. Thank you so much for, just agreeing to come on the podcast and do a little behind the scenes around the coaching and editing of our book, and it's just been a pleasure to be with you. So thank you so much. And for our listeners, thank you for joining us again today. We hope you've enjoyed our little chat. And if you have, share it with other leaders as well. If you liked it, they probably will as well. And, hey, hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of our episodes, and leave us a review and a ranking. And if you'd like to see us on video, you can check out our YouTube channel. So until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you then.